All right, and welcome back to the Prometheus Deep Dive Podcast, the CNC podcast. Today, my co-host is Garrett. Garrett, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. How about you? Happy
I'm
to be
doing.
here.
Thank you for coming on, and I'm doing well. So, for those who don't know Garrett, Garrett is obviously another player in the org community. I originally played with him during my very first org, which just hit its year anniversary not even a week ago. Um, we very briefly got to play with each other. I swapped onto his tribe, and then the second we lost that one challenge, which was also an individual challenge, technically, I was booted. I was in the minority, But anyway, that's who Garrett is. I believe Garrett's also playing a game right now that you can check him out, which we can also dive more into in a little bit. But yeah, let's just get right into this episode. So we'll start off as usual with the boot. So, what did you think about this boot?
Yeah, so I was actually super disappointed with this one. David and Kyle's relationship has been super fun. It's been a nice thread along this whole thing. And I was really hoping we were going to get to see it develop more, especially since both of them were kind of at the bottom of their OG tribe. So I thought it'd be super interesting to watch how a pair like that would navigate the game. But I mean, unfortunately, it just kind of ended up where for his own tribe, David was the one they wanted gone the most. And then the other tribe already had that perception too from him getting the haircut, which was legendary, by the way. That gave me big if anybody watched our Zoomvivor season, Missy, one of the players in it, was driving the whole pre-merge. And it was very similar in my head. I'm like, that's awesome. This guy's killing it. He's staying in and like in a good spot while getting a haircut. Like,
Yeah. I mean, what I will say about David is, and I've unfortunately said it way too much on this podcast in the past. I don't know what miss he did in the game, but what I will say about David is, despite him getting picking up his car from the body shop, taking an Uber, getting a haircut, and getting his dog groomed, he was pretty much out the whole first day. He was still very active socially, which is in part what carried him through day one. So yeah, I mean, a little frustrating from a production standpoint, but I absolutely love David, and I mean he made it work, and we got a little drama out of it. So I mean, I'm kind of happy with what he had brought to the table. But yeah, um,
and that's incredible. That's a lot. I didn't realize he
yeah,
did all that. I just knew about the haircut. But
Yeah, I mean, because that's what everyone was focusing on, was the haircut. But yeah, because that's what originally happened. He started his day off in his living room or whatever, and then yeah, he took an Uber to the body shop, picked up his car, then drove to get a haircut, then went home. I think he even got Domino's at some point. Don't know where the Domino's came from, but he definitely was just eating the whole pizza. I think that was in episode 4, might have been 5. But yeah, and then he went to whatever pet store that was to get his little corgi groomed. I think it's a corgi. But
oh
yeah.
my God, I didn't know he had a corgi either. Big corgi guy. So now I'm even more sad about this boot the more I'm learning.
Yeah, I think his dog's name is Queso. So,
Oh my God, I love that.
but yeah, there is a very, very, very tiny snippet of his dog in the on the cutting floor episode 5. It's only like a
Okay.
3-minute episode, so we see his dog on there. But anyway, yeah, getting back to David though. Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have seen the whole Kyle David thing work out. Obviously, part of the reason David was booted is that he very quickly got a perception of being a snake and being emotional, and then also like really him getting a haircut and stuff like that the on day one. The Primordials tribe did not like that, so that's another reason they wanted him gone. But yeah, I mean, we could have had something really cool from that if those two would have teamed up, because like every fucking episode Kyle's talking about David, 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 and then you
Oh yeah.
have David mention him once right before the merge. So,
Yeah,
but yeah.
absolutely. It would have been super interesting, especially since there's so many other duos kind of already in this game and like little duos and trios. It would have been so interesting to have one that's just like smack in the middle of everything, like could flip any way at any time, no ties anywhere else. Like it could have been super cool.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the crazy thing too, is that like if Kyle and David would have linked up, you're right, they were the bottom of both of their tribes. that would have put the Primordials then at 6-3. They could have picked off someone who, is potentially a bigger player on that tribe, because clearly David had very quickly, obviously, gone to the bottom. And then from there, everyone keeps talking about flipping, especially Kyle. Kyle's been talking about flipping since pretty much episode 2, because he was pissed that no one told him his name was the vote. But the funny thing is that none of them even knew that his name was going to be voted by CJ. So he got mad about nothing. But yeah, I mean, if he wanted to flip, and especially if he wanted to flip with Joe, I mean, right there, that's 3 people. They could have pulled in anyone to get whoever they wanted out, even if they would have teamed up with the girls.
Yeah, definitely. Kyle and Joe, I think, is going to be something to watch moving forward, because I feel like both of them kind of said independently in their confessionals, like, we think Colin, Anna, and Andrew are kind of this tighter group, and the other 2 of us are on the bottom. So I think if they link up, they could do the same kind of damage that Kyle and David could have done together. It'll just be the question of, do they link up or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hell, if you're saying that, you could have even put one more into the mix, and as I was kind of just saying, had a trio there,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're kind of like the bottom, bottom people, which Joe is still integrated with, Anna, Andrew, and Colin. But I don't know, we saw that Andrew has really good relationships with everyone in the game too,
Oh, yes.
so
Yeah, I definitely have him as kind of like the most central, I guess, because he has this connection with Lauren on the opposite side, which I'm not sure. We haven't got to really hear his intentions with that connection yet, on whether or not he's planning on trying to keep her or get rid of her, since she has been the reason he was out in the past game. But he has that connection with the opposite side that I think the only other person who does really, Colin has a little bit of one from Zoomviber, but they weren't even same season, so it's like a will not mesh thing. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, because that is the thing. Like, I mean, yeah, so he's got those 2. I guess he's kind of getting in good with Caro, because Caro, made her whole plea, like, maybe we can work, and then, he's got Anna, he's got Colin, and he still has a relationship with Joe. And then he also started to develop a good relationship with Kyle. So he's kind of got all of his bases covered socially right now. But
For
yeah,
sure.
so let's actually jump to the challenge real quick. So this challenge obviously is the touchy subjects challenge, but we called it, something different, because we obviously have like the whole Greek mythology theme going on. So it was a feast for Dionysus. So what'd you think about the challenge, and pretty much what came of the challenge?
So yeah, super fun challenge. I always love touchy subjects. You get to kind of get a pulse on where the game's at that point. So you really get to see just kind of in general, sometimes it's, a minority that has the most on somebody. So it's not really what everybody's thinking, but it can give you a general idea. Colin getting a bunch of those. Like, I love the dude. I played a small Zoomviber Sequester mini with him, and he's such a fun guy, so social. And I was hoping people wouldn't notice that about him, but it seems like everybody kind of has him pegged for that. I'm hoping it won't matter in the end, but like, I could definitely see him getting some targets on his back from that touchy subjects. I think that was my biggest takeaway from touchy subjects, was like all of the, running the game, most social, like all the big threat ones were almost exclusively going to him.
Yeah, definitely. And then on the, I guess, opposite side of the fence, I don't know if you'd quite say opposite, you have Kyle, who was, someone who should get the $250 prize, and then also someone who's most likely going to win the game. And so, like, it just, and I mean, just kind of looking at my notes really quick, that was, how many votes did he get for each? He got, so he tied with Lauren. He was voted, 2 for that, and then most likely to win 3. I mean, the numbers itself are low, but given that everyone else either got no votes or just 1 vote, I mean, that's still something,
Definitely. And those 2 could potentially paint a target on his back, but I feel like the other ones he got, like Quietus, that's not really a threatening one. He tied for most trustworthy with Anna too, and that's like one of the ones you want the most, because then people are going to think, especially when he was the one who was mostly being like, I'm going to flip, it's not if, it's when, and he's like voted most trustworthy. Like, that's perfect because you can tell he's not gonna like lock himself in with one strategy where sometimes that can make people turn into a goat, but also like people view him as trustworthy. So like he can definitely twist that knife when he wants to and people won't see it coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally don't think, he played the strongest game on day one. He's so used to playing, a full org that he does do that slow burn social game, as he did say right in the beginning. And he kind of did that and he was kind of distracted. So I don't think he made the best connections, but he massively picked up his game in those like 16 hours between day one and day two. And so he's now starting to put himself in a better position, which is really interesting. On the primordial side, you had someone like Colin who's playing such a strong game day one. And then here in day two, we didn't get to see too much of his gameplay. But the biggest thing that I think is a massive fumble, in my opinion, is someone like Lauren, who's by default on the bottom. She managed to get all of Colin's information. Colin just told her everything. And I don't understand why Colin did that,
Yeah, I was definitely alarmed when he did that. I mean, I'm rooting for Colin and Lauren. Those are my two people that I knew going in. So they're the two I'm rooting for. And I was, on one hand, I was like, great job, Lauren, getting all this information out. But on the other hand, I was really worried for Colin, especially this episode or maybe the next, because he'd said the two people who were immune on his tribe were the two names he threw out. And I was like, if this shakes up the wrong way, they could easily tell Joe and Kyle that Colin threw their names out. And they were both immune at the time too. So they easily could have flipped with no consequences. So I was definitely alarmed with that. My question, I think, moving forward then will be how genuine is that trio he mentioned with Andrew and Lauren that got created? Because if that becomes genuine, I don't think he has much to worry about. But if not, I mean, Lauren's scrappy. She will throw that under. She will throw that out, throw him under the bus so quick. So I'm a little worried for my guy Colin here, but
yeah,
his day one play though was insanely good. Like I was like, damn, he's killing it.
Yeah, I think his day one play, he's easily the top dog, top player that I would personally rate on the Primordials tribe. But there were still some good other players, because Anna, who's never played a game at all before, she's doing pretty well for herself. And then Andrew, obviously, kept himself in a good position all day one. And now you're kind of seeing he made his moves in between day one and day two to now put him in an even better position here. But yeah, I mean, Lauren is a really good player, and she played a very assertive, aggressive game this past episode, which obviously we saw from Anna's confessional did not sit well with her. So
yes, it'll definitely be interesting to see how that shakes out. Because Lauren is great at fighting from the bottom, but then also, as we saw with Anna, can definitely put some people off of working with her because, very aggressive about which sometimes you need to be when you're on the bottom. Like if you're on the bottom, you have to, force whatever thing you can make happen to keep you in. And I think she might have some safety nets, especially with Andrew, maybe with Colin as well, since he was divulging that much information. If she doesn't throw it under, I could see him trying to keep her safe too. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if they'll keep Anna, their alliance member, from targeting Lauren, or if that'll be like, what, they'll let Anna have it and knock her out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very big possibility. Personally, if it were me in that situation, because obviously in our game, we also played with Lauren. But
yes,
my time with Lauren was very brief. I was on the original tribe, then I swapped over to your tribe, then I was out. But knowing Lauren now, I think I'd be interested in working with her just because I've gotten to know her a lot more. But if I was in a situation like Colin and I saw her acting that way, that would just set off way too many red flags for me. She's being super aggressive, which is fine. I mean, it's a perfectly fine way to play the game, especially in a mini when you kind of need to make those aggressive moves. But me personally, I would just be like, you're being way too aggressive. You are trying to get all the information from me. And in the reality of it, you are not in a position to talk to me like that. Like, you got to give me something so I can protect you. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. But yeah, I mean, but good on her. She managed to pretty much get something out of every single primordial she talked to, except for Anna, who
Yeah.
then very quickly left the room because Colin came in.
Yes, and I'm definitely interested. I mean, like you mentioned, she's definitely somebody like, I mean, in Zoom Viber, when I was working with her, we really connected during that kind of like 16-hour-ish gap between the two days before the merge. So then we had our like kind of minority alliance forming that the goal was going to be to subtly get the numbers to then flip with our minority to make it bigger. But then the big thing with her was definitely very much she comes off as this big threat where the alliance can't be permanent. You're going to have to cross her down the line. So if you're like in the majority trying to flip with her, you're trying to make sure you still have your ducks in a row to take her out after. So I think I could see Colin and Andrew both very much thinking that same way with it and being like, okay, we need to make sure maybe we flip with her to take out Joe, but then we need to make sure Kyle sticks with us to get her out, which the question will be, will Kyle stick with them to get her out as well if they do that? So
Absolutely. I mean, exactly what you just said is pretty much their train of thought for Joe at the moment. Like, he's gonna pick up way too much steam. We're gonna need to get him out sooner rather than later. But
definitely.
so we haven't really had a chance to talk about Caitlyn at all. I mean, Caitlyn didn't have a super big part of this episode, but I'm just kind of curious because I haven't actually had a chance to talk to you really much about Prometheus. But what are your thoughts on Caitlyn?
So I'm a huge fan for Caitlyn. I was so impressed that she came in late by like an hour and managed to get that target off her back and then make it all the way through when her name was constantly being out to merge. Like that's hard to do. I feel like especially in a mini, people will grip to the first thing they can. And usually if you're gone for a long period of time, that's the easiest thing to go with. So I was so impressed that she was able to, kind of bunt that target to other people. And she's made this kind of strong trio girls alliance that I really like all three of them. I think they could all go very far. Anna did start to kind of catch it a little bit, and she did point it out to other people. So I'm interested to see if people get concerned about that, since the numbers are going to be like, if you go men, women specifically 4-4 on this next one. I'm curious to see if they're going to want to make sure they can nip that in the bud before. But I think otherwise, Caitlyn's been playing super well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, her greatest strength is, at least in this game, is that she is a good social player. As for her other games, I haven't really seen any of her other games, so I don't really know how she is on a social level in like a full org. But I do know right now there's a full org she's playing in that she just won the Final Four challenge, so she's in the Final Three right now. So
Oh, good for her.
yeah, she definitely is a pretty good player. And I think in her neck of the org community, she's been kind of known as a pretty big threat, which is why she wanted to come to Prometheus, is because she wanted to play where no one knew her. But yeah, she's absolutely doing a good job. And kind of going off of what you were saying, with Anna, like Anna started to pick up on that, which is totally true. But then, Colin seemed to be receptive of that idea. Joe seemed to be receptive of that idea, but then Andrew dismissed it. But personally, I think if I were Anna, the better thing would have been not to necessarily say there's an all girl alliance, but these three girls are in an alliance, not the fact that it is like purposely an all girl alliance. That is what should
Yeah.
be the threatening thing. And that should even more so be why they should have kept David over any of those three.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think Anna, from what I'm seeing, I think she's super perceptive. Like, I think this is her first game and she's picking up on everything, which is awesome. But I think the couple things that I have, like, questions with is just that she, I think, is wanting to share that information very freely. And I'm worrying that it might make it either be, like in this case with the Women's Alliance, it gets rid of the opportunity for her to potentially work with them if she wants. Or the other thing I thought was about touchy subjects, when she was trying to vote people that wouldn't get offended, vote herself for things and stuff like that. And I think that's a great strategy in touchy subjects. If you don't need immunity, you don't need every immunity. And if you're in that position, I would 100% throw that and try to do that. But I didn't like how she was telling people that she did that. And in one of them, I think she even specifically mentioned who her real answer was for that. And I was like, okay, like it was a little bit more of a like, let's tone that back. But I think it's just, first game and trying to figure out exactly how to play everything. But I think she's doing great, especially if Colin is kind of the kingpin of that tribe. if she's like his second in command right now, which it kind of seems like she might be, I think she could be the one who goes further in that pair because people target him first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like a shield method. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And we also see that she's growing closer now with Andrew too, who is also a part
Yes.
of their like trio anyway. Um, so yeah, I mean, she is doing a really good job. Now, as for the, throwing out the real name thing, so when I like first ever saw that. Okay, it was at the temple. So I guess when I originally was hosting that, I thought the same thing too. My mind just drew to that because there's so much going on. But it wasn't until actually later after the fact that she actually, if I remember correctly, she changed the category to use it as like an example. So
Okay.
she wasn't actually talking about the person who is not playing the game. She switched it to the most annoying, which was actually Lauren, because Lauren was
Okay.
given,
Okay.
yeah, I think Lauren got like 2 or 3 votes for most annoying. So it's not like there was this overwhelming majority of people that said that about her.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Oh, and then speaking of like Lauren in touchy subjects, I think one thing that was I noticed that was huge was Lauren didn't get the loudest player. And I thought that's huge as a person playing with her because I feel like usually her style is being the loudest one in the room and making sure she's pushing, pushing, pushing. So I think it's showing relative success on her part that she's been able to tone it back and be more real as she said she kind of wanted to do during this one. So I think it's working if Colin got it rather than Lauren.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and the funny thing is that like I feel like Colin's like loudest moment was just really him cheering his team on during the puzzle relay. But yeah, I definitely we've seen how Lauren can get, especially at any sort of tribal council. When she's on the bottom, she'll throw a fit. We'll just say that. So
Which I will say also, when you're in the game, you hate it. But once you're on the jury, like I got sent to the jury with it, I was living for it. So like it's huge in winning over the jury.
yeah,
Like,
it's putting on a show pretty much. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It is putting on a show. But I think also like the very, very dangerous side of it is like people are just like, you're fucking annoying. Like, please leave the game. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a good thing that she has not done that, because I think we could be looking at a whole different scenario for Lauren, but she still made herself known in this game. I mean, we saw all of day one, people were saying like she's smart, she's a good player. Like we can tell that. Question is do we want to work with her? Do we want to boot her? And obviously, time and time again, they wanted to work with her. So
mhm. Yeah, I can definitely. I feel like she is one of the better position players in this game right now. I just think the question is, I mean, people already mentioned maybe cutting her day one for being a threat. So it's just like, will she be able to avoid that? And maybe she will, because there are other big threats out there. I mean, there's Colin, like we mentioned. Andrew could maybe get the big threat target if people realize how well positioned he is, but I don't think a lot of people are realizing that yet. So
yeah. And there's Caro too. I mean, I think,
yes,
I said it in a previous podcast. I don't know if Caro realized how great of a position she actually was in all of day one, but she probably had the most power day one. And she still has a fair amount of that power. Obviously, from everything that happened between her and David was extremely pissed off at her. Because David really thought they were like this.
yeah.
And which that's what his that's what his little speech was about when he got, booted out of the game. It was all about Caro, and how pissed off he was. So I mean, it's part of jury management too. So it's just a matter of will it, have any effect in the end, because there's still a lot more game to be played. So
Oh yeah, for sure. Like looking at this merge, like I feel like a lot of times in a mini, you can look at a merge and it looks pretty straightforward. Where I feel like this one was 100% not the case. Like David was definitely the like forefront of most likely boots, but then you had the Kyle connection that was like maybe that can save them. And you have all these duos, all these weird cross tribal connections that people know each other from past things. So it's been great to watch, and I think it's just gonna stay fluid. Like I don't think there's any way it's gonna just stay in a pick off the minority.
Okay, interesting. So one little thing that I want to backtrack to, because I originally wanted to make a little bit of a point about it, and we kind of already talked about it. But so we do see that at the temple, people, and especially Lauren. Lauren is the like queen of explaining things away, which sometimes she has some really good points about it. But so we saw that, for touchy subjects. Um, in the bigger sense, even outside this game, I know a lot of people that absolutely hate touchy subjects. I know some people that absolutely love it. I know some people that are indifferent. But the funny thing is that you do actually see this challenge in numerous orgs. So I kind of wanted to get your like in-depth thought. What do you think about this challenge just showing up in games? Like, is it truly a crapshoot type challenge? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I think who wins the challenge can kind of be a crapshoot depending on how the. I feel like a lot of it depends on the answers too, but sometimes it can be very cut and dry, and it really is the person who knows the group the best wins. But I think a lot of times, there's so many of them. Sometimes you have to luckily guess which one of like two or three people it is. So in terms of who gets immunity, sometimes I think it's a crapshoot. But I think it's great for mixing up the game a little bit, letting people know what perceptions might be, letting people know if they might be on the bottom. I think it's great for stuff like that. And I think run the way that you ran it here. I know some orgs will do it in like if you get it right, you get to chop somebody and like 3 strikes are out. I much prefer this way because I think my only complaint with it as a challenge is if it's run in the chop way, because then it just becomes like the majority usually gets it. So I think this one still gives hope to the minority tribe. But then it's still a little bit of a mix up. And then sometimes that mix up can be used if somebody takes it super personally. Like, I think David took it a little personally in this episode. And, if he wasn't the one who was already on the bottom, I think that could have been weaponized a little bit. Like if Kyle got a lot of the negative stuff, I think he would flip in a heartbeat. So I think it depends heavily on who gets the negative ones. And if you don't manage it well, you can ultimately lose alliance members or the game because of it. So I think it's a super interesting challenge. I love seeing it. And it's also it's great for the audience too, to like, if like I hadn't seen the episode before in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So it was like nice to get back in and be like, okay, these are the people, these are the perceptions of the people. And it really kind of helped bring me back in too, because I know who's thinking what about who.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree, going back to how the winner of touchy subjects is typically handled, in terms of like the chop, because I've seen it done, I think only 2 ways. It's either you got like 3 lives to like chop, 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 you're out, or it's you know, oh, here are 3 things like Zoombiver did. Here are 3 things. You choose one, and one of them actually represents your life. And so, like, I thought
Yeah.
about that, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not really a fan of it because of exactly what you said. If there is a majority, the majority just targets the minority. So that way they don't have any sort of immunity, and then they can just pick them off. So yeah, I do like to try and give everyone a fair shot, because I think one of the best things about touchy subjects is, even if it's not 100% accurate to how these people are actually, it is all about perception, and perception is reality. And in addition to it being reality, it is a useful skill as a player to be able to perceive things correctly, which even Caro had said on a couple occasions during this episode, where she was just like, I guess I don't have a good read on the situation. But then you had Lauren, who often likes to like explain away like everything as either a crapshoot or it doesn't matter, which I most of the time disagree with her, although she manages to convince everyone that is the case, which is great as her as a player. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You need to be able to perceive things correctly, especially when it comes down to like the very end of the game. You hopefully know how everyone really is and how the jury will probably vote in the end.
Yes. For
So,
sure, for sure. Game awareness is key, and it's fun to have a challenge that kind of tests that a little bit with people.
yeah. So we're going to move on to the Ember Awards. So for those who don't know, the Ember Awards, everyone's got their own criteria, but essentially for me and for most of us, it is the pretty much the player of the episode. So who is your recipient of the Ember Award this episode, and why?
All right. So I was torn between 2 people here. mostly just based on how well I think they're positioned in the tribe, especially now that they merged two together. I felt like that was the best way to do it for this episode, with a relatively unanimous boot, 6-1 to 1-1. But I was between Andrew and Anna here. I think both of them are positioned super well, where neither of them are on people's list to go home immediately. Even though Andrew did get a vote from Kyle, I think it was just more of a throwaway. But yeah, I think both of them positioned super well. I think based on some of the, oversharing on Anna's end, plus Andrew's strong connection with Lauren, where Anna's getting a little bit rubbed the wrong way by Lauren. I think Andrew's my ember for the week. I think he has so many allies on the opposite side with Lauren, and then Lauren brings Caro and maybe Caitlin too. And then he has Colin and Anna, and then Joe and Kyle don't seem to have huge beef with them either. So like, I feel like he's just positioned super well. And I know he always says, social game is his key. And I think he's killing it in that regard. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I had 3 players in mind. My initial quick, instinct would have been to give it to Lauren, because despite Lauren being on the bottom, she only truly has one connection in this game, and that's with Andrew. Andrew and Lauren, that is the only prior connection in this whole game. There are no actually any prior connections. Colin knows of Lauren, Lauren knows of Colin. But anyway, my initial reaction would have been to give it to Lauren because of how aggressive she was. Nobody except Anna really called her out on it, even though she didn't call it out to her face. And then she managed to get information, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But then on the other side of the fence, I completely agree, because my other 2 people were Anna and Andrew, and I completely agree with you on that. Ultimately, I am going to agree with your decision, and I'm also going to give mine to Andrew. Andrew has been playing a great social game. He managed to really pick up his game from day 1 to day 2, although he was still in a great position in day 1. And he now has allies all around him. And while it's not quite in the edit, it was actually pretty quickly decided from the primordials that David was going to be the vote. Lauren was also trying to set up David towards the end of the episode with the whole Andrew comment, but it was kind of already decided, and Andrew kind of was pushing in that regard. So I'm going to ultimately give it to Andrew.
Awesome. Yeah, I fully agree. I think he's set up very well to keep moving forward in this game. It'll be fun to see how he manages all these different groups all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that note, do you have any final thoughts?
No other final thoughts. I think my only other ones was the music during the tiebreaker part of the challenge. Fantastic. I was jamming with it, loved it. Another one was, I like them just casually talking about Jim Jones and Jonestown.
Yep.
It was so wild for me too, because Jim Jones is an alumni from Butler University, where I graduated.
Oh,
so they were that's always our weird fun fact with Butler, is we're just oh yeah, forgot the Jonestown cult leader went here.
That is really weird. But yeah, I love those little moments. There was so much more to that conversation, because they were just talking about true crime, documentaries and stuff, which is then at the part where David was speaking of killers and this, that, and the other. But yeah, that was their whole conversation, because they had, I think, about 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes max, but I think it's about 15 minutes from the start of day 2 up to their first challenge. And for 3 or 4 minutes, it was silent. There was just a hi, I'm having water, I'm having coffee. And then the rest of the conversation was just about killers and true crime and all this other crap. So yeah, I wanted to put that in there because I think it's just kind of an interesting moment, while doesn't really have any relevance to the game. So.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love it. It's always fun to get those little more social bits, because you just kind of see how everybody acts in these conversations and stuff outside of the, game-based ones. And it's super fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So was that it for your notes then?
That is it for my notes.
All right, cool. Well, on that note, thank you, Garrett, for stopping in and kind of coming on sort of last moment, because I know you're just coming back from traveling, I believe. And Thank you for everyone tuning in. Don't forget to comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next podcast. Have a good day.